broadcasting around the world. This is the Hard Asset Money Show. Your wealth, your money, your future. Serious talk about what's happening and how you profit. Hosted by Christian Briggs. Follow him on X at BMC_HAM. Live in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kelly Wright, and welcome to a brand new edition of America's Hope. I'm your host, and I always like to say, wherever you are, I do hope that you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family, because you matter. You matter to God and country, and therefore the world, especially if you live in America, which is still considered a beacon of hope to the entire world. But look, another thing that matters for you and your family are your finances. You've got to manage those finances in order to be able to take care of your family, to maintain and sustain your family. And I'd like to say that the greatness of our nation is found in the homes of our people. And our people right now are beleaguered financially. They're concerned about what's happening out there. And if you can't manage your finances at home, don't worry, because our nation is $36.2 trillion in debt. That means that every American is paying more than $106,000 per person for our debt. And that is stunning. We can't sustain that. And if you're in debt in your own home, you know how difficult it is to claw your way out and to dig your way out. Well, here we are as a nation, and we're finding it very difficult to dig out of that. And it's not only a burden for every family and household in America, it is a threat to our national security. So we want to bring in someone who can really talk about this. He is the CEO of an incredible organization, Hard Assets. His name is Christian Briggs. He's been dealing with finances for many years and our economy for many years, working with members of Congress to address the situation that we find ourselves in today. Christian, thank you for being on this program. Let's get started about where we are with this $36 trillion in debt and the impact that it has on our dollar and even on our national security in terms of our military and just our development as a nation, and what are we leaving for our future? Where do we begin with this?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. But we just started about 60, 70 years ago when Nixon took us off the gold standard on August 15th of 71. He was looking to get reelected that November into the 72 election. And what happened was he realized he was coming into a recession with higher interest rates. So they immediately had to determine that unless we inflate the money supply to be able to pretty much put a bunch of cash into the economy, they're going to lose the election. The numbers were just too close. And when you start to think about how people vote, pocketbook, number one, pocketbook. So they realized him and Ford, and not that Ford was a lot to do with the decisions, but obviously it was on the ticket. And all of his advisors said, look, if you don't start to pump the cash into society, you will not be able to look at this thing. It's going to be too close of a race. So at the end of the day, he basically said to Congress, we need to take gold back from backing the dollar. We need to take that back. We're not going to have a gold standard. We're just going to let that cash float out there with no backstopping. And what was interesting about what happened, Kelly, was the dollar dropped 30% within 60 days in buying power. See, gold is the true value of any society's backstopping of currency, whether it's actually made of the coins or in this case, it backstopped the paper currency. Gold is, by all definitions, God's money. Okay, it's been mentioned 93 times in the Bible. I used this analogy before. When we're 5 years old or 10 years old and we see gold, we know it has intrinsic value. We know it has great value. We don't have to be told. It's kind of like knowing certain things when you're kind of born. It's in your DNA. It's wired. Why did the Egyptians 5,000 years ago call gold one of the most precious commodities? And it was only being able to be used or worn by pharaohs, the kings, the queens, the Roman periods, the Persians, the Phoenicians. I mean, think about all the society cultures over the last 6,000 years. Gold was a prominent asset of true wealth. It pretty much glorified the owner and the beholder. So let's fast forward. Now here we are, $36+ trillion in debt, and Donald Trump is talking about auditing the Knox Fort Knox. Why would he want to audit Fort Knox? Because he wants to know if the gold's there.
It's there.
Why does he want to know why the gold's there? Because he needs to backstop the next generation currency, which will be a digital currency with gold. Because if not, we're in some big trouble with this debt.
Indeed, we are. And I like the fact that you talk about the fact that gold is God's currency. Just a sidebar to that to show you how important it is. Even baby Jesus received as a gift from the three wise men gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Gold is the one that still stands out, even to this modern day era. In terms of, I know a lot of families that would like to be able to give their newborn babies the gift of gold because it has so much lasting value and continues to grow. Our dollar does not. And you were talking recently at Mar-a-Lago about the fact that we have people attacking our dollar. You're talking about the BRICS nations. Let's break that down as we go beyond Nixon to where we are today, and the fact that BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South America, how these nations collectively have targeted our dollar to weaken our strength and our financial prowess as a superpower in the world.
Okay, so again, let's start with two things. The World Economic Forum and BRICS. They go hand in hand. It ties right back to Nixon getting us off the gold standard. In January of 71, the World Economic Forum, started by Klaus Schwab, was organized as a means to bring and unite people around the world, especially heads of state, to create this new world order. They knew Nixon was moving off the gold standard. China, in all of their ability to try to take on the U.S. in a financial means, they knew that when Nixon was off the gold standard, when he pushed gold aside as the reserve currency asset to backstop the dollar, the World Economic Forum and the BRICS, perfectly timed for China at the time, knew that was the beginning of the end of the dollar dominant marketplace. In other words, the dollar being the number one reserve currency. It wasn't going to happen overnight, but that's when China started to escalate their global plan to create some sort of a financial behemoth, whether it was a standalone or they were going to have other countries join them. I think that the idea of having a membership probably wasn't on a lot of the discussion points in China at the time, but I'll tell you what was on there, and that is this. China knew that the dollar would never be the same again. It would never hold the same value. So now the World Economic Forum gets founded within months before. China starts to move aggressively in 72, 73. And the next thing you know, 2010 is when China formally announced the BRICS. And that meant was that they were going to start to work with other countries in an anti-dollar, anti-capitalist marketplace against the United States to create their own localized transactions based on localized currency. And that started in 2012. And the interesting time, Kelly, that started in 2012 was the same time that there was about $4 trillion of treasuries or bonds, US debt that China held. Within the summer of 10, they started slowly selling those treasuries. And what did they do? They started buying gold. And then they got more and more nations together to put together what now has become this behemoth. And what's interesting, the last 4 years or so, when Biden took office in 21, the BRICS nations made such significant progress. So you've got about 17 nations between members that are full members and then partners, which adhere to a very stringent agreement. And that is no dollar transactions wherever you can. Minimize dollar usage is what it is, to the point where they're not using them at all. And to China and Russia being the leading two, with India being the backstop, to be able to take on the United States' status as the reserve currency holder and then make the digital yuan the number one currency.
So the competitive edge of China, which is an adversary of the United States, it isn't just for the sake of competition. It's also for their goal, their aspiration to be the dominant superpower in the world and to actually vanquish the United States and the power that we have. Militarily, we're aware of that. But I think a lot of people have overlooked the fact that financially they are competing with us to not really partner with us, but to at some point harm us.
Oh, for sure. Let me take a little step back and tell you what the BRICS law is all about. First of all, it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Those were the original five. Those came about in about 2012, 2014. They started organizing the membership, given what they call a cooperation agreement that would adhere to a very stringent process, kind of like covenants within a contract. And that is very clear that they would utilize the power of their natural resources. Commodities could be oil, could be gas, could be a number of different commodities like gold, to utilize the power of those commodities to be able to trade among themselves, not allow the United States to participate in some of the purchasing of whatever those commodities are, to instead use those things to benefit themselves in a financial manner. Now, you make a really good point about the military stuff, so let me bring that up. The military was also always a part of the China's master plan, but in order to destroy a society, you have to destroy the currency first. If the currency has no value, it can't pay its bills. It certainly can't refinance debt. If it does, it's at a very extremely high rate of interest, very similar to what's happened in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s in South America, with many of those countries having defaulted for years on their debt because their currencies were so overinflated because they just printed them to annihilation. So the BRICS were very clever. There was a book written in 2014 where two generals had defected, very high-ranking generals from the CCP in China. And they wrote a book, and basically it said the long game. I'm going to paraphrase it here and try to summarize it for everybody. And what it said was that China knew back in the 1850, when the British occupied Hong Kong to try to starve the Chinese into submission, they knew at that time they would never allow that to happen. And it was called the 150-year war. And they're the long game. Remember, China believes in the long game. They're not here for the next quarter. They're here for the next quarter century. So fast forward to today, 2014, 2020, Biden takes office in 21. The BRICS has made an astonishing amount of progress. And I'll give you some statistics. 10 years ago, the amount of transactions that the BRICS members, and we'll take the ones that are currently both the members and the partners of today, none of them had very much of any localized currency transactions. It was very minimal. Today, 65% of all of their transactions for their domestic commodity sales is now in their local currencies. We've gone from a 79% daily use in the dollar 30 years ago to 49%. Just today, it was announced when Putin was asked about any cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, he said, there's no way I'm going to buy that and have any crypto as part of the Russian sovereign wealth fund. The only two things he's putting in there is the Chinese yuan and gold. So not only are they not using the reserve currency of the United States dollar to be able to use that as an asset, they're actually purposely bypassing it because they've learned to work around the sanctions over the last 10 to 20 years. And that's been kind of our fault. We weaponized the dollar to the point where at some point the river will find a way to flow around the obstacle rocks, right? Those are called rapids. And even if those rocks maintain the consistency of being in the way, the water will find a way. It will go from A to B. And that's what the BRICS did, Kelly, is they were able to utilize and build a whole new monetary policy, a platform, if you will, in order to be able to bypass SWIFT, which they still use it, but now they're using their own version. But the biggest thing was, once you put somebody in a position, like John F. Kennedy said something very profound in 1962. He said, if you take a man who has the power to use nuclear weapons or to give in to a threat where he has no way out. In other words, you're going to embarrass him. You're going to put him in a corner. What's the way out? Either he's going to be humbled and take that. No, he's going to use his power to either annihilate you or to work around you in a financial manner. That's what China did. They had no choice. They were put back in a corner, and they determined that if we don't do this, we'll always be at the mercy of whatever president, whatever Congress, whatever political party the United States has. And if they don't like us one morning, they'll sanction us, and then we're going to lose a ton of money, or we're going to have a bad economy, and the people will be will be upset. So they couldn't take that anymore. And literally, it's what Putin said many years ago.
And so here we are. It's 2025. We have President Donald Trump serving as the 47th president, his second non-consecutive term. He's serving now, and he just recently spoke, as you know, to the joint session of Congress, and said that America is back. And in stating that America is back, he talked about tariffs. He spoke of what has to happen in his view, his purview as president, what it'll have to do with tariffs. He also talked about Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, and looking at the dysfunction of our government functioning and finding ways to eliminate the debt, or at least eliminate the outrageous spending that our federal government has engaged in. And with that, there have been so many firings and dismissals of federal workers. Civil servants are, as you know, up in arms. They don't know if they're going to have a job today or tomorrow, or they're feeling put upon by the president and Elon Musk, who is overseeing Doge. And yet, you can see now that the president and Elon Musk are now working with cabinet members who are the heads of those agencies, finding ways to actually make the right steps and not missteps in conquering this debt. And all of the burden does not rest upon civil servant workers. A lot of it also falls in line with what Congress has done or failed to do as well in legislating and making sure that our bills are paid. We're just a few days away from March 14th, as you know, Christian, and they'll be talking about budget. They'll be talking about a continuing resolution. The word restraint will come up, and then the word government shutdown will come into play as well if Democrats and Republicans cannot find a bipartisan way to do something to manage this incredible debt that we have.
No question. The BRICS has played a part in our debt. That's the problem.
Yes.
The Hard Asset Money Show will be right back after a word from our sponsor. Let's take a look at how the rare coin market has skyrocketed in the past 2 to 3 years, specifically proof gold, and how their performance has done after Christian Briggs, CEO of Hard Asset Management, put an immediate buy recommendation in late 2019 on United States proof gold. Specifically $20 St. Gaudens gold pieces, $20, $10, and $5 Liberty proof gold, and $10 and $5 Indian Head proof gold. According to PCGS Price Guide, an 1878 $1 J1553 RB grade proof 65 plus was valued at $2,250 in October 2023, and today it is worth $190,000, an astronomical rise of 8,344%. On September 2021, a 190710 cent grade proof 68 was valued at $7,750 according to PCGS Price Guide. Today it is valued at $100,000, rising 614% in that span. Follow on X at BMC_HAM for all news and the latest developments.
So let's examine that. I'd love to hear what you have to say about BRICS, because we know that the president is constantly looking at our adversaries. He's also trying to broker peace within Ukraine and Russia. And let's not forget the Middle East with Israel and Hamas. And many of these adversaries that we have are becoming very astute in understanding how our economy drives the engine of our military.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a danger that many people in the media have not discussed.
Okay, great points. The media is not really understanding the significance of BRICS and the debt and how they go hand in hand. When we started to work with the Chinese government, remember when Nixon went over there back in the early 70s with Ma and tried to he had never, no president had ever gone to China before, but he was going to go over there and try to reestablish some type of a trading agreement or some kind of prosperity between the two. They call it a cooperation in the Asian culture, to have a cooperation agreement or understanding. And Nixon went over there realizing that this was a huge marketplace that could be really opened up to American industry. Fast forward, the World Trade Organization, WTO, they trying to get put in there. China was not a fair player. They have been predatory selling their products under cost, hurting and undermining the manufacturing industry in the United States. That's why we have a lot less jobs. We don't have the economic output in the manufacturing, especially in heavy industry. Let me give you some examples. When you look at Boeing, one of the largest manufacturers of anything in the world, when you look at the number of employees, the amount of money that they put out, they actually make a contribution to the GDP in a direct manner, not just a little bit, but significantly. That's called heavy industry. Every dollar that Boeing turns in a sale is worth $6 to $12 reverberating into the economy. That's massive. Look at what those engineers make, $200,000, $250,000 a year with all the benefits. Those are great high-paying jobs. Any community would love to have Boeing as one of their major contributors to the local economy. So when you start to think of what China did, they would come in with aluminum, steel, furniture, solar, anything that they could do to undermine manufacturing. We've had to subsidize a lot of times the difference between the tax revenues that the collection at the federal level and what the federal government spends on entitlements. Entitlement programs have obviously gone too big, too fast, but that's another thing we'll talk about here in a second. Let's talk about the root of the problem and not the symptoms. And what you saw was with the BRICS, and China specifically, was to undermine American manufacturing, bring those jobs to China. We decided that the lowest cost provider for making the widgets or whatever it may be was better than creating or maintaining construction or high manufacturing jobs in America. The Chinese have literally, in many cases, sent their products and sold them through Canada, indirectly or directly, under cost. You can't compete when a t-shirt costs $15 to make here and they're selling it to you for $5. That's a challenge in any marketplace. So the BRICS was formulated with one understanding: undermine the US dollar, which can hurt the US economy, which hurts its sovereignty, which is a national security risk in itself. Allow then China and the BRICS, specifically China. China's kind of like the head of the snake, and the other members are all the little pieces that kind of tag along, right? So next thing you know, China has today in 2025 created a dominant presence. And what Donald Trump is trying to do with this debt, let's talk about the debt. $36.55 trillion as of this morning. You made it very clear, $103, $106, $110,000. That could probably be $115,000 by the time we're done with this show today, because it's escalating so quickly. I heard today we're spending almost $5 billion a day in interest.
Wow.
That doesn't even seem logical. It's going to be $7 billion in 6 months per day. So at some point, China has realized that they have undermined the U.S. economy from two standpoints. One, undermining the dollar's use in a global marketplace. By allowing it to be used less and less, it creates less demand. That means more dollars are going to be sitting somewhere and not being used or needed or wanted, thus lowering the value proposition. And and that goes across all US-based dollar assets. If the dollar is not in demand, that means the treasuries are worth way less, the bonds are worth less, the real estate's worth less, our equities are worth less. The only measure that counterbalances that, which has been proven in the last 4 years, and to show this very simply, gold has tripled in 3.5, almost 4 years. And all it really did was opposite the dollar decline. All it does is hedge a decline in paper currency, specifically the dollar and so forth. So we know the dollar has lost a massive amount of its buying power. So China in the BRICS coalition, I always say China because they are the leaders. And what Trump's doing is saying, listen, and you've seen this before, Kelly, we'll put 100% tariffs on this. If you stop using the dollar, we're coming after you. This program he's put in still within the pretty much Mexico, Canada, China, Euro, the tariff, I call it the community of, I wouldn't call it adversaries, but in some cases they are certainly from an economic standpoint. He has put in place these tariffs, and his Secretary of Treasury, Scott, has made a tremendous amount of clear messaging, and now we're starting to negotiate these various things. The question is, how do you pay the debt down on a $5 trillion top line tax revenue, that's what the federal government should collect this year, between 5 and 5.1 trillion, when you need $8 trillion to cover the interest and just 4 programs. The interest on the debt is going to be 2.4 trillion this year. The Medicare, at least 1.5 trillion. Medicaid, 800 billion. Social Security, $2 trillion. Something like 20,000 people a day go on Social Security benefits. And then you've got another 25 to 30 pretty large scale programs or government agencies that have to be funded. Even if you cut back, we're talking $8 trillion, give or take a few dollars. The question is, why is President Trump talking about gold so much? Mm-hmm. And that's an answer that we can talk about a little bit further. But the first thing is, how do you get rid of the debt? You got to cut spending. You got to cut entitlements. You got to cut the taxes. And people think, why would you do that? Because it incentivizes productivity. People, when you have a lower tax rate, will pay their fair share. When you increase taxes, tax revenues go down. Did you know that when you increase the tax rates, it's been proven tax collections go down. So why not lower it? Increase revenue can help offset some of the interest. But the real question is going to be, will the tariffs work? When will they work? Okay. And what's the de facto meaning? What's the conclusion? And I think Trump's basically right, Kelly. I think what he's going to do is do what Andrew Jackson did. We had a $60 million national debt before the Civil War, before Lincoln took office. And all he did was, there was no income tax back then. There was none. So how did he get rid of $60 million, which was a tremendous amount? He put tariffs on everything that came into the United States. And within 5 years, he had paid it all off.
Wow. And what about McKinley when he promoted tariffs as well? Everyone laughed at him and said, no, it can't be done. And yet he did it.
You bet. Well, first of all, Abraham Lincoln wanted to do a income tax to help pay for the war. And they said, absolutely not. So they worked around it. They didn't need it. McKinley can't do an income tax, but you know what we can do? Let's do some tariffs. It worked methodically. It was perfectly aligned with the understanding that we'll do it just enough to not wreak havoc with inflation in the economy, but yet utilize the value of the power of the pen, write the tariffs, which ones on what products, what commodities, and so forth, and what are the percentages. And McKinley did it brilliantly. And then fast forward to Donald Trump. He has been studying the tariffs. Remember in 18 when he first did them?
Yeah.
Okay, let me tell you how good he did in 18. Had the COVID not happened in 20, let's put that aside for a sec. In 1819, just the 2 years, he was bona fidely in that Oval Office, had full access to whatever he needed to get done. He brought 462,000 jobs back to America that weren't here, that had left. Remember the NAFTA agreement during the Clinton years? We lost 2 million jobs during those.
Ross Perot sang that giant sucking sound. And that was
Ross Perot was on the money, Kelly.
Spot on. He was spot on.
Spot on. And here's what's interesting. Trump took a page out of that playbook and reversed it. Instead of NAFTA being part of the loss of manufacturing, he's looking at how to bring it back. He did it in 18. He was surgically smart. He used a scalpel, not a hatchet. He didn't use a grenade to try to blow everything up. He was very surgical, methodical, premeditated, and scalpeled certain items that he knew that he could put the tariffs on that would offset a lot of the loss of jobs. And he was right. People doubted him. Remember, the markets did not like it. They didn't like the sound of those tariffs. They sold off pretty bad. But what happened? They recovered. The next thing you know, 3 quarters later, boom, inflation goes down. Boom, GDP goes up. Boom, average wages go up. In fact, those tariffs not only brought back the 462,000 jobs, had COVID not happened, he would have brought back 600,000.
Yeah. COVID happened. I remember interviewing the president at the White House when he was still serving. And I asked him, how do we get the country together across racial lines, political lines? He says, success. The success wins. And we were doing well, he stated to me back then. He said, we were doing well until COVID hit. Until China hit us, is specifically what he said with COVID. And it just messed everything up. And at that time, he wanted to tell me that Democrats were talking to him. He was doing well. And yet here we are now with with what's precipitated as a result of the Biden years and the painful withdrawal from Afghanistan and actually giving Russia the idea, well, now it's time to strike, and here we are dealing with Russia and Ukraine, and of course China. I want to get back to China, and before we get deeper into the gold aspect as well as the tariffs. One of the things you were talking about with China is how they build and amass their income and their wealth. But beyond the gold, China does something that we can't do in America because we are a republic. We are a democratic nation that believes in the value of human rights. And what China has done through the CCP, they have a cheap labor market because they don't have to pay their people as well as we pay our people in America. They can force the labor. They can force things because of them doing things by the state, for the state. That is a fundamental difference in terms of how we govern here in America, where regardless of our problems, we are still working hand in hand to find a way to come together to create a more perfect union. In China, they just tell you what to do and do it. I think we need to make that abundantly clear to people who are watching this and wondering why can't we get there sooner in terms of restoring our economy and building a greater nation. And it's because we do respect people, even though we're going through mass deportations to limit the number of people coming here and get rid of people who have been here to be a harm to our nation and not a benefit to our nation. Is that clear? I mean, is that how you see it from an economic standpoint as well?
Yes, I see a lot of what you're saying is valid points. What we've got to do is look into the heart, though, of what it is that is driving this debt. The things that we're seeing right now from what the second term of Trump is realizing is we've got a lot of corruption. We have spent trillions of dollars and we're not even sure where it went. But what's also kind of scary is the lack of...
I don't want to interrupt you, but when you said that, though, trillions of dollars, you and I talked about this before, $4.7 trillion that was discovered through Treasury, through Doge, and no one knows where it went, how it was spent, what's become of it.
Yeah, it's gone. It's almost kind of like it was there, close your eyes, count to 5, and it's gone in a snap of a finger. How they were able to systematically take 4.7 trillion in a cumulative number. Obviously, it was different amounts, different times, and to different people. Yeah, make sure we're clear about that. But the bottom line is still $4.7 trillion. Okay, so here's my take on it, and I'm going to use a very analytical way of thinking this, almost like an engineer. To do something of that nature, you had to have had intelligence community, some agencies involved in the making sure that there were no breadcrumbs. And let me tell you what breadcrumbs are. Breadcrumbs are basically algorithms that are used to make something happen. It's a piece of code to go from A to B. You know, it's like a bank wire, if you will. You've got a system there that's very understanding. To be able to move the money like that, it's like a hidden ghost algorithm. There's not even the context of a trail. When I say breadcrumbs, in the software industry, whenever something goes from A, B, C, D, E, F, G, it's called hops. You can trace money like that. Every bank, everything on the SWIFT has the ability to say, well, that money originated in Japan, then it went to New York, then it went to the Caymans, and then it maybe went back to London. That's called hops, and there's breadcrumbs that use. When this money was discovered that it was gone, they don't even know where it went. In order to be that good, you're going to have the cooperation of the intelligence communities to literally use what they call ghost servers that aren't even on the grid, that are so classified and or so utilized in a manner of surveillance / classified that they were probably that money was used and then sent somewhere in what we call the ghost internet, the internet that doesn't exist but does. It's kind of like budgets. People have asked me, what do you think the budget of the CIA is? You mean the one that they tell you or the one that's off the books, right? Who knows? It could be hundreds of billions, it could be trillions of dollars. But in the day, to move $4.7 trillion with absolutely no trace of it even leaving, all they know is it was there somewhere because, well, it's on the ledger, and then one moment it's gone. There's no paper trail, there's no computer trail, there's no software trail, and there's no sending trail. That's called the breadcrumbs. That's how they can find hackers. So they instead of trying to figure out who did it, they reverse engineer and they go backwards, and then they find little clues where that whatever that came into a system, like a piece of code, like they call it the Trojan horse. They look at where the Trojan horse was there yesterday, then where it was a week ago, and they backtrack. And that's where they usually find hacking from China, North Korea, Iran, and so forth. In this case, nobody knows where the money went.
The Hard Asset Money Show will be right back after a word from our sponsor. The world is in crisis, with political unrest and financially unstable countries trying to print their way to prosperity by taking on trillions of dollars of new debt. It's incredibly concerning. That's why you need to own gold as a hedge. So call today to receive the free Hard Asset Information Kit on how easy it is to purchase and own gold. Gold prices are at an all-time high as they soared above $2,800 an ounce in January 2025. Since 2001, gold is up 1,000%, while the dollar is down 43%. With many gold experts predicting gold can surge up to $25,000 an ounce, now is the time to buy gold. 2024 was a record year for central bank gold demand. Russia bought over 200 tons of gold. China, India, and Poland also topped the list. Hard Asset Management is a trusted leader in precious metals and rare coins for nearly 40 years. We have the guaranteed lowest prices, fast and easy ordering, expedited shipping, with award-winning customer service available 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. CST, Monday through Friday. Are you truly diversified in your long-term portfolio to weather any storm? Call now or go to our website at bmcham.com and get your free Hard Asset Management Information Kit on how easy it is for you to own gold. 844-426-4653. Follow on X at BMC_HAM for all news and the latest developments.
So look, here we are though, and we know that the president has Doge. You know that Elon Musk is trying, and people who are working with him are trying to find out how we can become more efficient and cut the inefficiency. Where do you think things stand? I'm going back to that moment when Elon Musk was speaking at the president's first cabinet meeting at the White House, and he did a lot of talking that day. But he said something that triggered my ears to listening more attentively. He said, if we don't get this right, and I'm paraphrasing him here, if we don't get this right, we may be facing a financial downfall or a financial collapse or even the word bankruptcy. Is he right?
Yes, he's right. Let's just use simple math. You make $5 million a year, you make 500,000, you make 50,000 a year, whatever the number is. Let's just take a measure of income. Let's say it's 50,000 per year. You have debts that total, let's say, $40,000. But the interest on the debt is costing you $3,000 a year. Minus that against your 5, you're left with 2, but your cost of living costs $6,000. Some way, somehow, you have to supplement the difference between what your income is and what your expenditures are to live. So it's called deficit spending. In other words, when you go back, again, this all starts back in the 80s with bad fiscal policy under Jimmy Carter, Nixon on the first part, then Jimmy Carter. What we did was we got addicted to cheap money. So when Elon was talking about, if we don't get this right, we're facing, he used the word bankruptcy. Because for 45 years, we have declining interest rates, overinflated and stimulated the economy through what? Deficit spending, like Europe has done, and they've crashed 3 or 4 times in the past 75, 100 years. And what Elon's saying is there's no plan B. Think about this. If you can't cut the spending and you can't cut the interest on your debt to a manageable amount of interest to start reducing the principal, only thing that's left is either you raise taxes to an astronomical amount, which never works. People just don't pay it. Or it hurts the economy and they can't pay it. Not that they don't want to, they just can't because they don't have the income. Or you start thinking about a prepackaged bankruptcy. The third thing you can do, which is interesting, is you devalue your currency. So you make the debt cheaper, less expensive, because you're devaluating the currency. In the last 2 weeks, we've seen a drop about 7% in the dollar. The word on the street is, and I like to think of my sources in DC, as you have many as well, because you're there, Secretary of the Treasury has made it clear that a weak dollar is not a bad thing. It will bring manufacturing jobs back. It'll also give us an opportunity to lower the cost of the debt in principle, and thus lowering interest rates. Now, whether this can take effect in such a way that Doge cut the spending, cut the waste, make things more efficient, increase GDP, increase tax revenue, but more importantly, get a handle on the debt. I'll give you another topic here that we can kind of segue in, and that is this. Trump made it very clear in the last 3 weeks. He wants to leave office with at least a $6 trillion economy, $6 trillion in tax revenue, stabilize the debt and the interest thereof paying on the debt, to be able to make it to where maybe 20, 30 years we can start paying it down and eliminate all this debt. I'm not sure that's possible if we continue to have inflation, because we can't lower rates unless inflation is at a certain point that comes within a module, right? The 2.5%, the 2.5%. I think that the administration might even be happy with a 3% inflation rate, because it still shows productivity, because inflation is good. It means people are spending money, the demand is there, supply could be limited, but we can always manage supply by bringing manufacturing back. But what Elon's saying is there's no plan B. Think about this, Kelly. We are going to face $2.4 to $2.7 trillion this year in interest payments. 1/3 of the national debt is going to come due this year during the calendar year of 25. Its average interest on that debt is 2%. We're refinancing at 4.3, 4.5%. So not only is the debt, when Obama took office, at $7 trillion with a $2.7 trillion tax revenue, we're at $37 trillion nearly with a $5 trillion revenue. So we've increased the debt by almost five-fold, 5.5-fold, but yet our revenues are only up 45%. That's the problem.
Which brings us back to the president talking about tariffs and putting it out there and letting the world know, come to America, do business in America, bring manufacturing jobs or other jobs to America, and you will not face tariffs. Based on what you just told me, that scenario seems to be a wise and bold move to invite other nations to come here, and some are coming.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. I think what Trump's doing is three things. He's trying to insert himself as a wedge between Putin and President Xi Jinping to minimize the BRICS further damage or further progress. That's one. He's lowering the dollar to make our manufacturing more competitive in the marketplace, like China has manipulated two things. They've been predatory sellers below cost to hurt our manufacturing industry. And two, they've been manipulating their currency for 25 years, lower, so that their cost of doing business is less expensive there than here. And you make a good point again. They've got cheap labor. We'll call it slave labor. You can call it inexpensive labor. But at the end of the day, they do force people to take jobs for minimal pay in order to be able to maintain the consistency of low manufacturing costs, not only from a currency standpoint by manipulating it lower, but from a labor standpoint. And thus that's how they built. I mean, China doesn't really create anything new. They steal our intellectual property. They manufacture what they're told. We give them the designs. Look at Alibaba, a very successful company that bridges the manufacturing industry of China with manufacturer needs, right, from all over the world, including the United States being the most prominent one. And they have been very good at that, but they're not creators, but they're followers. And they followed our ideas, and then they made it better because they made it less expensive, more efficient. We built a $20 trillion economy. What do you think of all of our debt? $20 trillion the last 25, 30 years has gone over there. I mean, we're running deficits now of $130 billion a month, trade deficits, and primarily with China. Not all of it's China, but a lot of it's China.
And see, I'm glad you're bringing this to light. I think the president has tried to communicate that with the people that he's discussed the tariff with, as well as Doge. I think what's missing, though, in the messaging is the fact, just like you stated, just how dire it is. The president has stated in so many ways that we're being ripped off, that we're being treated unfairly. When you start talking about those hard assets, and you're looking at the math doesn't lie. unless that 40 points, I still can't get over the fact that $4.7 trillion disappeared. But the president is on target because he sees what's being done in terms of the abuse of the American people. And it's not just China. You're right. It's not just China. But China is the leading one. It's also Europe. It's also, which is why he's challenged the EU and NATO to increase its own budgets to improve its defense and not always be on the dole of the American people. So where do we go from here if America has any hope of getting beyond its debt burden? And mind you, $36 trillion, as you stated, it's going to take 20, 30 years to get out of this.
No question. And you got to be careful as we try to pay the debt down. If our dollar would then reverse its course, instead of going down to make manufacturing more competitive, and it runs up, then we become less competitive. So here's how you got to be very careful. It's a fine line because you've got three elements working against us. One, you have supply chain issues on products that we need desperately. China manufactures 90% of our pharmaceuticals. They manufacture steel, aluminum. They manufacture so many what I call critical minerals, right? They've got the access, being China has like cobalt, lithium, and all the critical elements that are needed in electric grids, cars, whatever it might be. The next generation, as Biden would have said, the revolution, which we'll be paring back under Trump, thank God. But there's still things we need. And another thing that we've got to look at and be very careful and mindful of, here in America, if the debt continues and rates stay elevated, it's going to continue to exacerbate all of the interest on top of interest on top of interest on top of interest that keeps getting, the old debt keeps getting renewed at the higher rate, and then more old debt. And then we're doing only short term, which means we're rolling over short-term debt and rates continue to go up. Inflation stays high. And Bank of America said a couple of weeks ago, their CEO Moynihan said, in 25, 26, they don't see any rate cuts coming. They see elevated interest rates. They see elevated inflation. And based on that, the core just last week was showing a fairly aggressive uptick for the last month of January. But I will say this, Trump is a smart man. Let's talk about the man, not the president. This is a guy, Kelly, that negotiated with some of the toughest people in the planet called the unions. If you're in New York and you want to build a house or a skyscraper, you're going to talk to 5 unions minimum. There's the steel guy, the cement guy, the glass guy, the plumbing guy, the electrician. That right there is 5, and you're going into 6. That doesn't count all of the interior design. See, Donald Trump is a master at saying, look over here while I'm over here doing my business. He wants you to be distracted, and he will negotiate all the way down to the very last second to get the very last best deal he possibly can. So the tariffs are going to work extremely well. Here at my family office and at the company, we have done an analysis on some of the early stage tariffs and the products he's putting on. Now, the car thing, as you know, he kind of backed off a little bit on the Canadian car imports, the tariffs there, because it might have been a little aggressive, but he will do it. And whether it's a 5% or it's a 50%, whether it's a 10 or a 20. See, when we could create a product, and I'm going to use a car example, China has, in Mexico and Latin America and other parts of the world, they're artificially selling electric vehicles way below cost. The government there subsidizes majority of manufacturing of heavy industry. Like they're getting in the commercial airline manufacturing. They're in the EVs, their auto division, and their car manufacturing is very, very good and very aggressive, but they're subsidizing it. Kind of like Airbus does, right? In Europe, the Airbus manufacturing of commercial airlines, France and other countries in the EU subsidizes that. It's an uncompetitive playing field. Trump is going to do 2 things. He's going to lower taxes. Now, whether he gets taxes eliminated, we'll see. It's a great idea, and there may be some opportunities where he can lower them substantially. But what he can do on the tariffs, he can make that T-shirt, that car, that plane, that train, that boat, a competitive pricing point to be manufactured here, incentivized with tax credits, lower tax rates on corporate profits if you're a manufacturer, because here's the bottom line. Made in America stands for something. Made in America, you can have it today. You don't like the quality? Well, you can walk down the street. Why? Because it's made in America, not 8,000 miles from in another country that doesn't even speak English. You don't know what you're going to get. You're going to wait months. You could wait to the point where by the time you get it, it's wrong. Made in America, and you know this, has always made the top quality levels. In other words, it used to be a point where Made in America was the best. And you know what? That's what's coming back. We're not going to make America better with these tariffs. We're going to make America the best it's ever been. And with the tariffs, again, we got to be scalpel here. Okay, we can't use a hatchet. We're going to scalpel. We're going to surgically make sure that the items of which, like aluminum and steel. Let me tell you a quick little story here, and for your audience. China was told, do not sell aluminum and steel into the United States in a predatory manner called predatory selling. You've heard of predatory loan, people who loan money for high interest rates. It's the opposite. They're selling aluminum and steel, which is about the two biggest ingredients in manufacturing and construction. Think about that. You're going to build a skyscraper without steel. It's in every part of that without aluminum. So they decided they'll sell it to Canada. What does Canada do? Well, they relabel it and saying, oh, it's our product. They sell it back to us. Okay, Trump's a little smarter than that, man. He's like, wait a second. That still has Chinese writing on that stuff on the box, okay? You might put that maple leaf on it, Trudeau, but I recognize Chinese characters when I see it. Okay, come on, all right? We're not Stevie Wonder here, baby, right? So let's just say it for what it is, okay? So next thing you know, he's slapping China and Canada. See, Canada thinks that Trump's stupid. Oh, no. The fox has never been proven to be stupid. He's sly. He's smart as the fox. He said, look, man, you want to play that game? I'll slap you at 25%. Now, if we can get the price point of Chinese steel, not Canada steel, at the same price point as American steel, you're going to buy Chinese steel? First of all, we know that China doesn't always use the same quality measures we use, whether it's the ingredients in the final product or the quality control itself. We know this. They've been caught using lead, asbestos. Just in the last 10 years, they got caught using this stuff, using things of which that are clearly prohibited in the United States because it's either cancer, it's carcinogen, right. And we know this, right? So Trump, I know he's got smart guys around him because I know many of the people that talk to him every day. And they're saying, Mr. President, let's cut here, let's do this. And he goes, perfect. And he's not so gung-ho to wreck the economy here. That's why today he goes, you know what, we're going to kind of give another month or so. We'll give a little bit of month here. We're going to make sure we're doing the right products with the right amount of tariff or the percentages. Kelly, we're dealing with a very senior level negotiator. And if I ever had to be in the room, I always want to be on the president's side of the table, my brother. That's for sure.
Yeah, you were talking about we're not blind. We can see it. I still question sometimes if Stevie Wonder is really blind.
Man, he can play the piano, man. He jams good, man.
We just had to digress for a little bit to bring some humor to this because it's a very serious topic.
The Hard Asset Money Show will be right back after a word from our sponsor. Let's take a look at how the rare coin market has skyrocketed in the past 2 to 3 years, specifically proof gold, and how their performance has done after Christian Briggs, CEO of Hard Asset Management, put an immediate buy recommendation in late 2019 on United States proof gold. Specifically $20 St. Gaudens gold pieces, $20, $10, and $5 Liberty proof gold, and $10 and $5 Indian head proof gold. According to PCGS Price Guide, an 1849 $20 grade proof 64 plus was valued at $20 million in November 2021, and today it is worth $25 million, a rise of $5 million in less than 4 years. On April 2024, a 1921 $20 satin strike grade SP58 was valued at $750,000 according to PCGS Price Guide. Today, it is valued at $2.2 million, rising $1,450,000 in that span. Follow on X at BMC_HAM for all news and the latest developments.
While we're talking about tariffs and the fact that the president has been focusing on that, he has not forgotten the farmers. Talk to me from your vantage point about how the tariffs can help farmers in America getting to the point not only made in America, but grown in America.
Boy, that's a great question. The farmers have just gotten kicked to the curb. Obama, I got to start at the beginning to really understand. And I have a farm here in Tennessee, 112 acres. We actually farm, right? Soybeans. And then on the off years, we do feeder corn. And I know what this is like. It's hard. It's challenging to make money in the farming industry. But let me tell you where it really started. Obama pretty much weaponized the EPA and the FDA. The Clean Water Act was utilized in so many ways, the Clean Air Act, in order to gain water rights and take that away from farmers. Look at the state of California. They have just stripped water rights away. Then in no way was it right by the farmers that had those things for decades, if not 100 plus years. The thing with Trump is he has got such a big heart. Okay, this is a guy that, I don't know if you remember the story, but he has paid people's mortgages off. There was an incident where his limousine, I guess, or had a flat tire. Somebody helped him. He tracked that man down and paid off his mortgage. Okay, so he got a big heart. He loves the farmers. I mean, this is a guy that loves the farmers. So let's talk about what he's doing and what he has done. He is now talking about helping the farmers. Again, lower the taxes, lower energy. See, if we get our energy policy back, which he is, and we lower diesel fuel, gas fuel, that automatically lowers the cost of agriculture from three different ways. One, it's the tractors you use to farm. It's in the fertilizer, it's petroleum based, right? And the third thing is getting the stuff to the farmer is all going to take trucks. So he is knowing that the energy policy that he's going to put forth, my understanding is it's going to be like what he did, drill baby drill. And he is going to help those farmers by lowering their cost of doing business, getting rid of the EPA's crazy law. The Supreme Court reversed the Chevron law, which obviously gave agencies the right to make their own policies without legislative oversight. That was a beginning. That helped tremendously. That was obviously during the Biden years, and Biden wasn't happy about that, mind you. He hated that deal. But Trump's going to utilize that value to make sure that we're not importing. We import 90% of most agricultural products, including beef, avocados, from Mexico.
Yeah, it's 90%. Crazy. Yeah, and our soil in California is very similar to the same soil in Mexico. So why aren't we finding or seeing more agriculture done in California?
Right. And we want to do business here. We want to make a farmer. We've lost over 40,000 farms in the last 5 to 10 years just because it's not profitable. They can't even break even anymore. You've got diesel at $4 a gallon. They have what they call, it's a certain type of diesel work on the farm. Even that's $3 a gallon. When you take a look at farming 1,000 acres, and you're planting whatever, it could be soybeans, it could be corn, it could be a number of different things. By the time you're done on 1,000 acres, if you're lucky, you're making maybe less than $40,000 to $50,000 a year. That's before taxes. Now that's probably after the cost, but for a family of 4, that can be challenging. I don't care where you live in. If it's in California, you're in the poverty line there. So what we're going to do, and I say we being the country, we're getting behind Trump, and what he's going to do is he is going to, number one, he's lowering the cost of energy production. Okay, in other words, what it costs to get the energy out of the ground, get it to the homes, the cars, and by doing that, increasing productivity, increasing production first, we're all of a sudden going to be doing what we did. Remember back in the first term, we were net sellers of energy. We sold oil, we sold natural gas, LNG. Look at what he just negotiated with Japan, $1 trillion, decade-long LNG, liquefied natural gas. We're going to make a fortune off that. And we got the gas to Japan at about half the price they would have had to pay all the way from Russia or the Middle East. And we're like, no. And I'll bring this up. When Senator Bill Hagerty, the senator of Tennessee, was ambassador at the time during Trump's first term, and Bill is an amazing negotiator. And I know why Trump selected him. I've gotten the pleasure of knowing and getting to know him over the last 4 or 5 years, him and his family. And the one thing I notice about Bill Hagerty, Bill the man, not just the senator, is that he's very calm. He understands the philosophy of a deal, but he understands America will come first. But that doesn't mean we can't have our partners given a great deal. You don't have to systematically take advantage of somebody's needs. You do it in such a way that they're grateful they got what they got. And Trump always leaves the deal where both parties believe they got a great deal. And that's what Bill Hagerty did in Japan when he negotiated one of the largest liquid natural gases. And Japan literally changed their whole method of refining because Bill had negotiated that based on Trump's insertion saying, Bill, go do this for us. It's good for them. It's good for us. Well, what did Biden do? He killed that deal.
Yeah.
What did Japan have to do? Go back to the Middle East, pay twice as much, and we lost about $8 billion a month. $1 billion a month, and that was direct profit. That was going in the pockets of every American that even comes within 100 miles of the seller, because remember, every dollar we receive in that manner still goes $6 into the community, the daycare, the dry cleaner, the grocery store.
Absolutely.
All of that, Kelly.
Yeah. We could talk forever about this, and we've got a lot more to discuss. We have to do another show on this important topic because it really is about our national security. If our debt is broken, our country is broken,
Yep.
and we can't secure ourselves as a nation. I appreciate you so much, Christian, over the time that we've been talking, and of course, you've been on my program before, but this was something that you and I felt that we had to do. We've talked about BRICS, we've talked about Doge, we've talked about tariffs, and there's still so much more to discuss. So let's promise that we bring more of this conversation to the American people so that they get a better understanding, a clear-eyed 2020 vision of what President Trump and his administration is trying to do on behalf of the American people. Now, notwithstanding the political winds of change that come about from Democrats and even some Republicans who can't get with the president because of the way he communicates sometimes, but at some point, how do we get all of Americans to work in a bipartisan way to realize the value that we can have as a nation if we find the common ground of helping our nation grow economically, spiritually, educationally, in every matter? How do we get to a point where we can break bread together and be each other's keeper and not be each other's killers?
Okay, Kelly. A very deep question, and I'll give you an answer from experience. Where I grew up, there was always two fashions. There's the good guys, the bad guys, different gangs, different places, different people. And I always used to say, if we're going to have conflict and we're going to sit there and try to outdo each other, kill each other, not literally, but in a sense of business, I said, no one's going to make the green, brother. No one makes the green, right? So if we're doing that and you want to destroy this country, I'll say to the Democrats, you ain't going to make no money. You want to destroy this country? You think you're going to go back to this corruption where U.S. aid is going to send you all this money? Those days are gone. We got to work together. Now, you may not make as much, but if you want to keep making the green, you got to get on the bandwagon here and get on the Trump train, because Trump is going to make America higher productivity than any time in history. In order for you all to even have a chance at another election, you need money. There was somebody once told me, they said, all these people who have nice cars, nice houses, it was a socialist. We used to debate, and they said, just think of all the food you can put on the table if you just sold that house and took that cash. And I said, you are correct, but that's giving the fish to the person. But that house, they built the house. They fished. I didn't have to give them anything. They earned that right, that money to buy the fish themselves. Remember the old saying is, give a man a fish for the day, he'll eat for the day, but teach him how to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. See, the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans is really simple. The Republicans believe that you should be paid a good wage for a day's work. The Democrats believe that you might be, in most cases, the victim, that not working is acceptable and will give you what you need to get by each day. Donald Trump is like, no, we're not going to do that. So I would say this to anybody who doesn't believe in what Trump's policies are, or our ideology. For the most part, we're constitutionalists, you and I, Kelly, and the Republican. We believe in the Constitution. Whether you're a conservative or not, you don't have to be a conservative person. You just have to believe in the Constitution. And if anybody out there is listening that is on the left, I'm going to say this. If you want another day to fight, you got to have money. And if you're not working with us to build America up, there ain't no money for anybody. It's the old saying is we can conflict ourselves to the point where there's no green for anyone. But I think at this point, the Democrats are realizing the hearts and minds of the American people, the soul of America is capitalism. Now you might be able to soften here, have some good entitlement programs. I call it, hey, listen, my mom was on welfare before. Okay, it's a safety net. It's not a career. It's not a career, people. So Democrats, don't keep telling people that they're too victimized to work. You tell them you're not the victim, you're the privilege to be born in America, and Donald Trump is going to increase the opportunity for everybody. He doesn't care about the color of your skin. He doesn't care about your IQ. What he cares about is your heart and mind and willingness to work hard, and not allow anybody to tell you differently. And that's the difference. That's the spirit. I mean, Kelly, when Biden got out of office and Donald Trump took that oath of office on the 21st of January, or 20th or 21st, when he became, full for a day, it was like a cloud lifted off this country. Like, people were exuberant. You know what I'm saying? It was like the attitudes went up. Like, I was like, I don't know what I won the lottery, but I feel like I did.
I would go by the White House and to report, and there was really nothing going on at that time with the Biden administration. Of course, they were saying goodbye and farewell, but you could just tell the difference when January 20th came around, inauguration, and there was all this activity. And even police at the White House had smiles on their faces. There was a sense of wow, something just changed. Something just changed in the atmosphere. It will get tough. It will be difficult times ahead. That happens in any presidency. But the fact of the matter is, you've broken it down financially. You've broken it down of how we have to guard our future and the future of our generations to come. I have a little grandson. I want the best for him. I think every American wants that for their children, to pass something down to the next generation and not be saddled with the burden of debt, and certainly not working from behind, but working in front of. And Christian, I always appreciate you, man.
You too.
You're more than an economist. You're someone who cares about people and how they manage their wealth, and certainly you're working with members of Congress. What are you and members of the Congress planning to do to help this administration keep this country going and growing?
Well, the first thing we have to do is get Donald Trump back in there. And he's not just a president. He's not just a father, a husband, a grandfather, but he is a businessman. That was the first thing. We had to get him back in there, which we did. And one of the things that Senator Hagerty and I worked on, and we raised a lot of money, we started a dinner here about 2 years ago with Kid Rock, Bob, to raise about $45 million, I think $43 or $45 million to create that election integrity committee, which was obviously to monitor during the election and the ballots and all that. It was a phenomenal success. And, Trump, I know, had a lot to do with it. Senator Hagerty is a rock star for getting me involved in it. It was a privilege to be a part of that. And Bob did an amazing job raising money. And so it was a unity, right? So when you ask me, what are we doing? Every single day, I bring this information like I did with you. I sent you some things that would open your eyes up. How bad is the BRICS? What are they doing currently? How bad could they do it in the future? Where's the debt? How do we reduce the debt? How do we create efficiency? How do we create wage increases without creating inflation? So what I'm doing right now is I'm sending those kind of things every few weeks, every month, to members of Congress, both the House and the Senate, to say, bring this to the president, let him know, or bring this to any of the committees, whether it's the House Financial Services or the U.S. Banking, whatever I can do. I continue to send ideas and opportunities we got to get rid of this debt first and foremost, but we can't do it so exponentially that it would harm the economy. You can't just cut government spending by $2 trillion because you think it's all wasteful. It's not all wasteful. There are programs, you know this, Kelly. We can't just cut off welfare. We can't cut off food stamps. We cannot touch Social Security. Our seniors are the bedrock. Okay, they've worked hard. They paid into the program. It's like a pension. You're owed the money. So Trump will not even think about cutting those entitlements. But what we can do is get rid of the waste, the corruption. I think that Elon will probably end up getting somewhere between $300 and $400 billion this year. I think Doge is going to be an overwhelming success. I don't know who created it, who thought of it, if it was Musk or if it was the president. I'm not sure. But
President was him.
Okay, well then, you know what? That is the blue ribbon right there. I'm sure it was Trump, but because remember, he's a businessman. He's going to say, how do we cut waste in that? And then he probably came up with a Department of Government Efficiency. Whoever was a creator was a genius. But they're already geniuses up there working anyway. Look at those kids that Elon, 19-year-old kids going, hey, we just found this and this. The bottom line is this. If people can just allow him 18 months to deliver on what he's doing right now, because it takes about 15 to 18 months for the economy to see and feel what you and I are going to feel. It takes time for that to reverberate into a real action and a conclusion based on what the actions are today. And when he does continue to do this, I'm telling you right now, we may have a little contraction in the GDP. We might have a little bit of pain in inflation, but make no mistake, the Secretary of the Treasury, even Mark Rubio, Secretary of State, and Elon and his people, and Donald Trump, and he's got some other good people around him, the gain will be 10 times better than the minor pain that we suffered, that we felt for just a few months. You got to do it. You ever look worked out? There is no gain without a little bit of pain. That's just how it works.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Christian.
You
Final question for you for this go round. We'll do this again. Is what's your hope for America?
Well, the hope for America is that we maintain the consistency of what Donald Trump sets forth in this term, that we maintain the understanding that there is no difference between a party. There really isn't. We're all the same. We all want the same great outcome for us, our children, our grandchildren. There's different methods to achieve that gain, to that prosperity. And the way you do it is less government is a fact, and more power to the people. The whole Constitution was based on little government power, lots of power to the people. And the Democrats somehow have flipped that. There's 450 agencies in the Washington, D.C. there, 450 agencies. I didn't even know there was 50. Where did this all come from? The federal government was never meant to be this big. Let's go back to the efficiency, the capitalism, and understanding that it's the people's house, not the politicians.
Christian Briggs, he's the CEO of Hard Assets Management, and you've been watching a special of America's Hope, getting America from the brink of financial failure to success. Christian, thank you for being one of those people out there helping to lead the way, helping Congress, and even helping the President of the United States. We'll do this again. Thank you. Until next time, America, keep your faith alive, keep your hope in God, never let it go. And we'll be here for you to always provide some hope for America.
Silver could hit over $43 an ounce this year, backed by concerns over a growing supply and demand imbalance. Many investors and forecasters see silver rising high, even past $100 per ounce. Silver demand is set to explode. According to a recent International Energy Agency report, solar will generate more power than any other source, including coal, natural gas, and hydropower by 2027, only 2 years from now. Silver is a key metal in the manufacture of solar panels. Hard Asset Management has the guaranteed lowest prices, fast and easy ordering, award-winning customer service, and expedited shipping. Call now and get your free Hard Asset Management information kit on how easy it is for you to own silver. 844-426-4653. 844-426-4653.